So I know I've talked a little bit about quality of earnings before, but this video is specifically on it. So quality of earnings, we're really asking the question, does what's on the financial statements reflect the economic reality of what's going on in the company, or not? Quality of earnings can be reduced by what's called alternative accounting methods. This is where if your company is using one way to do depreciation, so you're using straight line, and everyone else in the industry is doing double declining balance, then you're using an alternate accounting method. What that does is it makes it more difficult for analysts and people reading your financial statements to compare your company with other companies in the industry. And the question that comes to mind for these analysts and people using the financial statements is, well, why is the company doing this? What else are they doing? So it's kind of good to be using the same basic accounting methods as everybody else in your industry. Pro forma income is something that you will see when you go to the financial statements online. You can go to a company's financial statements, and at the beginning there'll be the president's letter, and there'll be all kinds of happy people smiling and showing how happy the company is and all that good stuff. And then they'll have a bunch of what they call the pro forma income. And pro forma is otherwise known as earnings before the bad stuff, because what management does in pro forma income is remove items from income that they think are not that important or not that relevant to their actual performance. That's why it's called earnings before the bad stuff, because obviously your pro forma income for companies is going to be, and I forget the exact percentage, whether it's 30% higher than their actual GAAP income, but it's pro forma income. It is not prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and they just call it earnings before the bad stuff. Okay. The main thing that reduces the quality of earnings is what's called improper recognition. And this goes back to the two groups of people, the management that wants to hit certain targets, and the users of the financial statements who really would like some accurate information. When I'm talking about hitting targets, if you've got earnings per share for a company, and what companies strive for is sort of a gradual increase in their earnings per share, okay, over time, because this makes them look like they're improving constantly, and they're a fairly steady company. They don't want something that goes like this. That would make people think their company was erratic, and they could end up at the same place, but this just looks like a steadier company, a little more reliable company to invest your money in. So if a company gets to this point here, and they see that their actual income statement would report here, they've got every incentive to make it, get back up where they'd like to see, this kind of line that's a little bit more sensible. So, companies will do things like WorldCom, and this was a while ago, but they basically capitalized a lot of expenses. In other words, there were expenses that all the other companies in the industry were expensing because they were expenses and they belonged on the income statement. But WorldCom was the accountants at WorldCom were directed by the president of the company, the CEO, to capitalize them. And so they ended up capitalizing a lot of expenses, which removed those items from the income statement and made their income statement look a lot better than it really was. This had immediate, pretty good results, but eventually it was a catastrophe. So you can read up on WorldCom if you want to, but that would be an example of improper recognition. You're calling something an asset when in reality, or according to generally accepted accounting principles, it is an expense. And it's done for the purpose of manipulating the company's income. Sunbeam was another company that did a lot of what you would call improper recognition. What they did is, it's kind of a long story, but basically there was a guy who was known as Al Dunlop. He was also known as Al Chainsaw Dunlop, because he went in and would sort of do turnarounds for companies that were in financial difficulty. And the turnaround would usually involve firing a whole bunch of people and streamlining operations and all this. And he'd been at the company for a while, and the turnaround had not quite turned around as much as he wanted. So in November of, I forget which year it was, but in November, he had the company extend a special offer, promotion, to all of their, the people that sold the Sunbeam products. This would be gas grills. And said, oh yeah, well, we'll book the sales for all these grills here. We won't deliver them until May, okay, so this is when we'll deliver the grills. And then you don't actually have to pay for them until December. And so now they're booking all the sales revenue for this year. So that's improper recognition, because the earnings process was nowhere near complete. But they booked all the sales revenue for this year. The SEC went in and reversed most of those journal entries for that, and their stock did not do well, and it ended up being a debacle. There's many, many other examples of improper recognition. I guess what it comes down to is, if you check the financial press, you can usually find this out about companies. And chances are, if they're doing one thing, they're probably doing a bunch of others, because that would be the sort of tone set at the top of the company. And in both cases, it was the tone at the top that was driving all the improper recognition, which reduced the quality of earnings of the financial statements. So when we're talking about quality of earnings, that's what we're talking about. What we get to next are horizontal, vertical, and ratio analysis, and these can be helpful in determining how good the quality of earnings of a company actually is.